You
At
had
that
moved
time,
out.
no, I hadn't at that time. That was August.
It
I moved
doesn't
out
matter. This
in
part doesn't
October of
matter.
2022.
Okay, can have you both talking at the same time?
We are here in the case of Caitlin Martin versus Rachel Mills, case number 25-02389PH. This hearing is being recorded on Zoom and live streamed on YouTube.
And this matter comes before the court today on Ms. Mills, the respondent's motion to terminate the PPO. As an initial matter, I'd invite both parties to state and spell your name for the record. We can begin with Ms. Martin. Very good, thank you. And Ms. Martin, it's your burden to establish that the facts underlying this PPO are true and correct. And what is required to sustain this type of PPO, a non-domestic PPO, is that there are two incidents of threatening or harassing conduct. So I'm going to swear you in, and I'll let you explain the basis for this PPO. And then I'll also allow Ms. Mills to ask any questions, and then I can make a ruling on that. So, Ms. Martin, if you'd raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony today will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good. In a nutshell, and without just reading the basis for the PPO, can you explain to me why you requested the PPO in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. So originally I requested the PPO because I had repeatedly asked Miss Mills to stop contacting me. She had shown up to my house. She had followed me from my work to my now husband's work, got out of her car, banged on my window. She came to my house while my children were home, banging on my windows, scared my, at the time, 5-year-old to the point where he cried and asked if she knew where his dad lived and if he could go to his dad's so she wouldn't show up. The PPO was put in place. It was in place for 6 months. We tried to get it reinstated, and she fought that. We came before the court, and the judge said that he would release the PPO as long as she knew not to contact me. And I said I was fine if there was no PPO. I just didn't want any contact with her. And then, of course, she can't help herself, so she contacted me again. And I can't have that in my life. It's too much.
Okay, and the contact that occurred was electronically. It was over
Yes.
social media.
Yep, and through mutual friends. It's all the time. It's nonstop.
Okay, and when you say has she directly reached out to you on social media?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the content of those messages? Well, I guess first, how do you know it is Miss Mills?
It's coming from her account.
Okay.
It has her name, and it's always about my husband, always trying to come between me and my husband. And she, honestly, I feel like she's just jealous and she wants to ruin our marriage, but it's not going to work. We're very happy together. And it's just pointless. There's no reason for it.
And these messages are sent directly to you or to your
Yes.
husband?
Both, but to me, the ones that I included in my petition were directly to me.
Okay, all right. And when you say she also reaches out through mutual friends, are they passed on to you because the friends want you to know what's going on, or is it because then this is, I understand your opinion, because Miss Mills is contacting them knowing that they'll pass it on to you or directing them to pass it on to you?
I think the latter.
Okay, you think she's reaching out to friends, giving them information, knowing in other
Absolutely.
words that it's going to get to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Ms. Mills, do you have any questions for Ms. Martin on the basis for the PPO?
Yeah, I have a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
So you stated at the basis that I showed up to your house banging on your door. Can you tell the judge why I was at your house that day?
Yep, because my husband had custody and time with his child, and she showed up there because she didn't want the baby at my house. The police showed up because we called them because she would not leave. And it was my husband's time with his child. He had full right to have the baby there. And she didn't like it because she doesn't like our relationship, like I said before. And the police came and made you leave because
So-
he had right to be there.
Right. So then the other question I have was, at that time, was your now husband dating me 3 weeks after we just had that baby, or was he dating you? And
Me.
I was, oh, he was dating you, but living with me?
You
At
had
that
moved
time?
out.
No, I hadn't at that time. That was August.
It
I moved
doesn't
out
matter. This
in
part doesn't
October
matter.
2022.
Okay, can't have you both talking at the same time. So we just have to, one question at a time. And what you're trying to establish, it sounds like, Miss Mills, is that there was still an acrimonious relationship between you and Miss Martin's now husband,
Correct.
because of you just had a baby, but he was being unfaithful with Miss Martin.
Correct.
Okay, all right. No, I get that now. And I had a couple questions, Miss Martin. Is that your house that Miss Mills showed up at, or is
Yes.
it
It's
your
mine.
husband's? Okay,
It's
it's
mine.
in your name, in other
Yep.
words? Okay. All right. You can continue, Miss Mills.
The other question I had was the messages that were sent to you on Instagram. Did you or did you not respond to them, making it
I responded once
multiple times? Okay.
regarding the birthday party. And I was not being friendly with you. I stated facts that there was no birthday party because you wouldn't stop reaching out to my husband and he does not want anything to do with you. And so when you said, Phil won't respond to me, I said, right, there's no birthday party. This isn't happening. There's no plans. And I did not respond after that. And I kept getting messages.
Okay. You claim that Phil doesn't want anything to do with any contact of our son. Are you aware of the fact that Phil showed up here last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't say he doesn't want anything to do with his son. I said he doesn't want anything to do with you.
So then my messages to you, are they or are they not just about my son and time with
They are
his
not
father?
about your son. They
He
are
has-
not.
The judge has copies of those messages.
Yeah,
so
good. And he can read that it's not about your son.
Mm-hmm. I think it's about the co-parenting, the relationship between us, and then making sure that my son is
And then, Rachel, I do have to say,
safe.
if it's about your son, it needs to go through Phil. I've asked you many times not to contact me. And
Have you
last time we
though?
were before
'Cause I
the,
don't
yes,
have
and
those
last time before we were
messages.
the judge, last time, he said, you don't need to contact me. We have nothing to talk about. If you need to talk about your custody issues, that needs to go through my husband,
Which they
not
do.
me, not me.
Which they do. They do.
Great. Then why are you reaching out to me? I've
Because
asked you not to.
All right. I'm only asking questions, so I don't need to make my statements.
Okay.
Okay. Well, any additional questions at this time?
Which friends have I reached out to? Because I'm unaware
Ray,
of which friends.
Brandon, Ari,
So is
Brooke,
Ari, how are you in a friendship with Ari, being that that's somebody that is having an alleged relationship with your husband?
we're your mutual acquaintances. We have talked.
So when Ari
So don't
sends
even worry about it.
our messages that are about her baby with your husband, is she also sharing those with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I wouldn't call Ari her friend, being that she.
I just called her a mutual acquaintance.
Okay. So
Yeah.
my text messages with Ari were not deliberately sent about you. They were about her relationship with Phil. Were they or were they
Then
not?
I don't know why you sent them to me.
I didn't send them to you.
Okay.
Did
Well,
I?
then why did you include them in this
Because
case?
you did. On your petition, you sent one of Ari's messages between her and I. It's the one that you labeled as crazy person at the top. That's me and Ari.
I did not
communicating.
label that. I did not have that one. That was in the petition from Phil, not me. That was
Well, no, but you included it in our petition. It's in our paperwork.
okay. Well, then I included it because of the Facebook post that you made about me and my husband.
And I proved that I didn't make that. So
You posted in that.
and I'm
yes.
allowed to post about my
And I'm saying that you were
with
talking
Phil.
about us.
Am I or am I not?
You are
Am I?
talking about us, and that's
But
all I'm saying.
am I or am I not allowed to talk about to other people my
No,
relationship with
because you
Phil?
brought my name into that. So no, you are not.
You were a huge. Okay, then the other question I have is, were you or were you not my friend between the
I was
months of
not.
December 21 to
I
March
was not your
22?
friend.
So
I was
then
not.
why do we have text messages with you saying, I love you, Rachel. I want what's best for you, Rachel. Why did you
Because
take
I
me
say
out
that
to
to
dinner
everyone.
in March 2022? Why
Judge,
did
I'm
you?
not getting a clear record.
Yeah, we
Maybe
gotta
this
only have
meeting
one
minutes.
person talk at the same
Then
time.
can she ask one question, please, and not just ramble?
Yeah, if just one question and then allow Ms. Martin an opportunity to get the answer out, and then you can ask another question.
Right. So then I was asking a question that had multiple answers within the one. Caitlin, you claim we're not friends,
We're
but
not.
there are multiple text messages between us that have talked about our friendship. There's multiple Instagram conversations between us that have talked about our friendships. You and I have had multiple calls between December 21 and March of 22 that talked about my relationship. You were somebody that told me that I could rely on you to come to about my relationship with Phil. Also, on top of that, there are various pictures of the two of us between December 21 and March of 22 that showed a friendship. Is there or not?
So that's 3 months, and we had all mutual friends, correct, at the time. And yeah, we could have been friends, but you lied and manipulated your way through everyone, which is why nobody talks to you anymore. So was there maybe a time where we could have been considered friends? Sure, but we were never good friends.
Did you or did you not in your petition say that you were afraid of me since January 2022?
I am.
But
And
then
I have,
why are you saying that we
because
could
you
have been
locked
friends
me
in
into a
March
bathroom.
Hang on,
2022?
one at a time, please.
Because you locked me into a bathroom.
I didn't block you
People
into a
had,
bathroom,
yes, you
but that's
did.
fine.
Okay,
No,
well, I
I
think
have
we're getting
witnesses to
outside
that account.
the stuff that we have in the protective order here, because it sounds like that's quite a bit earlier than I granted the PPO anyway. So any additional questions, try to keep them around the incidents that are the basis for the PPO, which is the, appearance at Miss Martin's house, and then secondarily unwanted electronic messages.
Can I speak to those two situations, or do I only?
Yeah, I'm gonna
want
have you
questions?
testify next, and then I'll make my ruling, but I just want to give you a chance. Do you have any more questions for Miss Martin?
No, I'll just make my statements.
All right, let me swear you in, and you can make your statement if you'd raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony today will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I sent a huge 1,000-word apologies to that kind of briefly explained the situation. I do feel like the premises of the original PPO was manipulated by Mrs. Martin, Miss Anderson at the time, to force a little bit of control. She lied about a situation in regards to my son being at her house, saying that I did show up and scare her child, when really I showed up and knocked on the door asking for my child back, because as a first-time mom who had no awareness of the fact that my child was going anywhere but her grandma's, it was a fearful time for me. There was also a recent lie that she told in the beginning of this, stating that I tracked her down from her house to my son, or to my son's father's work, then back to her work, or vice versa, or of however it went. And I would like to clarify that I was going to my son's father's job to take lunch and meet up with him because our son was not feeling well. And I showed up and she was there. This was during the time that I was dating my son's father. She had no business being there, and she manipulated it to look otherwise, which
They
was
don't
found
work
true.
at the same location, Miss
No.
Martin?
They do
Okay.
not. I have no idea where Mrs. Martin works. I don't live in Grand Rapids. I live in Detroit. So on the premises of why this is being extended, I have absolutely no idea. Her husband tried to come after me with a PPO that was denied about a month before, on the basis that he was trying to shut me up for something that I had no part of, in which the judge threw out very quickly.
Which judge had that one assigned?
I believe it was Rebecca. I put it in the motion statement, the number of that. And so immediately after he got it thrown out, he texted me saying that he didn't have to worry about getting a PPO against me because another person got it and it was granted immediately upon request, showing that he had something to do with Caitlin Martin's PPO against me and that they were trying to come after me. I do believe that this is a manipulation of the law, and I do believe that this is unfortunately an abuse of the system. I do not live in Grand Rapids. I don't communicate with the people in Grand Rapids. If people of my son's father's friends reach out to me, it's solely about my son and asking how we're doing. I don't talk to anybody that's over there. I choose not to because I have moved on. I've been dating over here. I've been working over here. I live in Novi. I've completely removed myself. And where I'm having difficulties right now is trying to form a very healthy co-parenting relationship. And I'm finding that there's a lot of miscommunication between my son's father and his wife. And she can say otherwise, but it's really dampering a relationship because he is unable to come to places because of her feelings towards me. And that was the reason why I reached out in January, was to literally ask to just let this go so we can all have a healthy start, all move forward, and allow there to be time for my son to be with his father, because it is clearly becoming apparent that her issues with me are one-sided and really putting a damper on anything moving forward. I am just literally trying to move on.
Is your concern, not to be clear, Ms. Mills, about your time with your son or about your son having an adequate amount of time with your ex?
So I have sole custody with my son with supervised
you've got it.
visits. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have sole custody with supervised visits with me. So if Phil has access to my child, unfortunately, I have to be there. And part
That
of
is
the
not true
reason,
because we
yes,
had
it
him
is.
Well,
overnight.
hang on, I'll hear it and then you can respond, Ms. Martin.
Yes, it is. He did have him overnight. I granted him an overnight because he asked, and I thought it would be fine, which was before the issues that took place on my son's birthday, and which I was very much told by my son's father that she wanted nothing to do with my son. So I stopped allowing overnights due to that. Because I did not feel comfortable with my son being in that house. Also, I am friends with other parents that are in the mother circle that don't also feel comfortable. So there's other issues that are along with that. That's why I took away the overnights. Basically, with this, I feel like, what's the way that I can put it? I want nothing to do with my son's father in a romantic way, and I've made that very clear. My ex was abusive towards me in multiple ways. I moved out in October 22, and there were several incidents that took place afterwards that really reminded me that this was not somebody I wanted to be with. And I have been dating, I have been living over here. There is zero interest in me being with my son's father. So when it comes to the co-parenting, I have to put aside my distaste for my son's father in order for us to healthy have a co-parent. And so when I say that I would like to move forward and have a very, allow him to be in my son's life, it's only for my son's being. It's not for my choice. If it was my choice, it wouldn't be the case. My friend of court says otherwise. I have to abide by those rules. So,
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I kind of understand what you're saying about it. Is really in your mind, it revolves around your son and the parenting time that may or may not occur with his dad.
Yeah.
All right. And Ms. Martin, is that your perception as well, or is there more to it than that?
That there's way more to it than that. But honestly, if it is about co-parenting, do it with him. Stop involving me. There's no reason that your child couldn't be here. We have his other son here all the time, and I love him. And I have 4 children of my own that are here all the time. I'm not a bad mother. I've never had anything said negatively about my parenting. I love your son because he's a product of my husband. When he was here for that night, we had a great time. He got to bond with my kids and we all loved it. But she does not want me involved. So that birthday party she's talking about, it was just supposed to be with my husband, her child, and his side of the family. I was not invited. So that's why my husband said, we're not doing a party, because I'm not having a party for my son without my wife being there.
So I'm going to correct you on that. There are plenty of text messages where I've told Phil to bring you. And then in my message, after I messaged you on Instagram, I said I would have loved to have you both there. So that might have been your misconception, unfortunately, but you've always been included in those. I invited you to the one in Detroit that Phil said no. And he said, the only way I'm comfortable coming is with Caitlin. And I said, go ahead and bring her. There's messages that say that.
All right. Well, I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of the entirety of the relationship during this hearing, and I do have other hearings to get to. But I guess what I am hearing here is, obviously, given the nature of the relationship, and that the ex was involved with you. You got a baby together with him, and then at some point, entered into a relationship with Miss Martin, and that undoubtedly, as inevitably in that situation, it creates some hard feelings. And it creates a special difficulty when you've got a baby, a little kid to be concerned about, and she making sure you know where they are, and that they're with people that at least you are supportive, that you believe are safe for your child, as any parent would want to do. And I think that's what resulted in the initial incident here of going to the house. But nonetheless, of course, Miss Martin would be, as anyone would, to have someone, appear at their house, knock on their door and kind of confront them about, what's going on with parenting time, a situation that they might not know about, that would be at least startling, or feel like harassment. Secondarily, the messages, and it's not the first case where I've seen it, where, oftentimes I say, it seems to me like probably, some of the women get along. However, the one person that's absent I don't hear from here is Phil, the guy who was involved with both of you and may or may not respond to messages himself. And of course, it's natural when you don't get that. Well, gee, just like if I can't get a hold of one of my kids and I know they're with another one, I might call them or text them and say, hey, are you with this? Can you ask them this question? Well, unfortunately, in this relationship, that's just not going to work that way, because of the way the relationship started. And it's just simply to involve Miss Martin in any of those communications is only going to create more distrust and acrimony, I think, because, and of course, since she is still married to your ex, anything that's critical of him, or talking down to him, if it goes to her, well, she's going to respond to it naturally. So I'm going to leave the protective order in place at this time. I do think there are two incidents that would support the issue of the protective order. However, I'm doing note here, these don't last forever, and it also is, people get all worried about protective orders, but the truth is, of course, it's a civil case. It's not a criminal record or a bad mark, in anyone's file. I do note that the protective order does prohibit you from purchasing or possessing a firearm. Is that something that's important to you, Ms. Mills? Do I need to delete that provision? I haven't heard any mention of, some of these do involve people who are threatening to kill each other. However, I do understand there is disagreement and bad blood here, but I don't think either of you are going to murder the other person. Is that important to you, or should I delete that provision, Ms. Mills?
How long is this going to be held for?
It's going to remain in place
under
its terms. It remains in place. Actually, did I extend? I don't think I've granted an extension on this. So actually, this one expired on March the 17th of this year. Or no, I'm sorry. I signed it on March the 17th. It expires then on September 17th of this year. So it'll remain in place, essentially through the next start of the next school year. So do you want me to delete the firearm provision?
Yes, because just in case I need to
Arm yourself
unfortunately.
for any given reason. Well, I
Yeah.
don't think it would create a danger to anyone here, and it is a constitutional right, and I haven't heard anything about firearms involved. So
No.
I'll delete that provision. Otherwise, it'll remain the same. It'll remain in place until September 17th. And basically, it just says, don't initiate contact. And, importantly, when you do have a circle of friends, sometimes I know in electronic contact, if you say the other person's name or you refer to a situation, it could only be the other person. You post a picture of them or their child or whatever. Well, in this case, it's you're not her child, it's your and your husband's. But if you post something that only could refer to them, it's easy to say, well, that was meant to be passed on to me. Now, that may or may not be your intention, but nonetheless, the most cautionary way to approach those electronic communications is just not to mention her or write things in there that would say, as you pointed out, your husband, at least doesn't have this protective order against you, and exes, in general, are probably fair game for bad comments, but not
Yes.
necessarily Miss Martin. So, and that requires some caution because, of course, they are married. They share the same last name. So you just want to be cautious that nothing could be construed as against her. And Ms. Martin, if there are any additional incidents between now, I don't think these incidents are sufficient to extend the expiration date of the protective order at this time. However, if there are additional incidents between now and the expiration, you can file for an extension, and I'll evaluate it. And Ms. Mills, you have the right to object to the extension as well, and we would conduct another hearing like this. But for now, it'll remain in place. I'll just modify it to take off the weapons provision.
So then, sir, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yep.
Just want to clarify with the understanding, both the situations where she said I knocked on her door and knocked on her door and knocked on her window took place in 2022. She has that listed, correct?
I can't recall the exact dates, and I think as I'm thinking through this order, it was a scenario where I had granted one, and I don't remember if it was objected to, and I didn't, I terminated it, or exactly how it, it panned out. But it appeared, as Ms. Martin testified today, that the situation had ended. So I said, okay, you're in different locations. We don't need it anymore. And then I think the electronic situation started up again. Yeah. So let's see here. It does.
Yeah, because that was all from the original.
Right.
PPO
And
that
so
I had in
then,
place.
the
Yeah.
other question I have is the last message I had to her was, I believe, January of 2024.
No,
Okay.
Or was it January, December
25.
20? It was December 2024. So if I haven't had contact with her like that, we're still worried about me having contact still?
It was
Yes,
after that.
well,
Okay.
that's the impact of the order, is simply just do not contact her.
Okay, and then so how do we find a way to mutually have a healthy balance here? Because if my son is, if we're, I guess, what does it look like moving forward once September happens so we don't get here again? Because I feel like there's no way for us to have complete separation that this PPO is asking,
Yeah.
with my son's father and my son being related.
Yeah, no, and you're going to obviously have to communicate with your son's father regarding parenting time and things of that nature. However, you should simply not include Miss Martin. She clearly doesn't want to be in the middle of that relationship, nor does she want to be kind of a reference point or a touchstone. Now, you do have sole custody of your son, so you are able to, within the dictates of your custody and your friend of the court order, set the terms for, interactions with your son and his dad. But right, you're just not allowed, and you'll have to structure that in a way that doesn't involve Ms. Martin. And I know that's tricky to do in a situation like that, and the two of them are married, but you're going to have to
Right.
find a way forward. And
Right.
unfortunately, it may mean less time, because it gets more complicated, that your son has with his dad. That may be to his detriment, but as I said, the protective order isn't forever, and after 2025, I would think that what I would do is I would leave it to, Miss Martin to reach out to you, if she gets to a point where she thinks, there's a basis to restart relationship to talk about, for your kids taking medicine and she's going to be in charge of that or whatever.
Right.
Let her initiate it and make the contact and try to rebuild some of the trust. Because I'd say, that's the number one thing now is
Well,
is the trust, and you're going to have to try to rebuild that after a, timeout period.
so then my question with that is, because I have her blocked on all social media due to this situation, is I don't want to be back in your courtroom again for anything of, in my opinion, civil conversations that I'm trying to have moving forward. And so I'm trying
Well,
to
the only
avoid
civil
having-
conversations that'll get you back here on this order are conversations with Miss Martin. So just, don't have those, at least until after the order expires in September. And after September, I would leave it in her court to reinitiate it, because the truth is, when you've got an old protective order that's been granted, it's okay for me to look back at the old order and say, well, there were problems back then and there are additional problems now. And then I can, kind of stack them on top of each other to create the instances. Once I've granted an order and put it in place, and kept it in place, then, its basis can be, in effect used again. Now it gets older, and, if you, something very minor happens 10 years down the road, it's pretty hard to establish another protective order on the former basis. But like this one, if things get bad again, well, she's got a quick basis to come into court because she's already had one, to obtain a protective order. So, like I say, you've got kind of the most to lose in the situation. Thus the pressure's on you to, avoid initiating contact.
So then the other question I have is, one of the biggest concerns that both Phil and Caitlin had were this whole Facebook post that showed up. Am I or am I not allowed to talk about my experience that I've had in that dating realm?
You mean with Phil?
Not when it
Yeah.
involves me.
But you
Yeah,
are
but not, I would not involve Miss Martin. And by involving her, I mean not mentioning her name, and also not creating a situation where I said, well, and then she took up with this lady who lived at such and so an address, and it can only be her. People try to get creative, and I encourage them not to do that, because then I get tempted to get frustrated and impose, fines and stuff like that, which I don't want to do. So.
And so if we just continue doing what I've been doing for the past 6 months, we'll be okay.
Well, I would say if you completely cut Miss Martin out of any of your communications,
Which I have.
sounds like you have. Sounds like you'll be fine with continuing until September. And if there are violations, like I say, I'm sure I'll hear from Miss Martin. So, and I'd rather not do that too. I'd rather have this thing die down and, eventually, turn into a civil, kind of relationship between adults. But sometimes that takes time. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate
Thank you.
your civility during the hearing today. And with that, we are concluded.
Thank you so much.